Well, investigations into the Justice Department bias against conservatives begin in the House of Representatives today. Representative Jim Jordan's Weaponization of Government Committee has the FBI in its crosshairs.
Well, a man who's been called an FBI legend is also speaking out. Dale Hurd spoke with this veteran agent and author of a new book on the Bureau's downfall.
Thomas Baker has been called an FBI legend. He was the first agent on the scene when President Reagan was shot in 1981 and worked under and alongside many different FBI directors over his 33-year career. With his new book, The Fall of the FBI, Baker is one of the most senior figures to write that the FBI has become a threat to democracy.
The biggest factor, I believe, and what it all traces back to, is a change in culture. It began with Robert Mueller, and the bad consequences of it became apparent in the succeeding years.
Baker says the beginning of the fall of the FBI can be traced to a specific moment in time. It was 3 days after 9/11. In those 3 days, the FBI had managed to identify all 19 9/11 hijackers, their associates, and their connections to al-Qaeda. It was remarkable police work, and FBI Director Robert Mueller was expecting to hear praise when he informed President George W. Bush.
And instead, George Bush dismissively said to him, "I don't care about any of that. I just want to know how you're going to prevent the next one." Mueller was humiliated. He resolved after that encounter to change the FBI from a law enforcement organization to a domestic intelligence organization.
Then, just weeks later, Congress passed the USA Patriot Act. Along with the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA, these tools intended to fight terrorism would be used against American citizens. Conservatives, pro-life Christians, and even school parents have become targets of the FBI. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan says he's been contacted by dozens of FBI whistleblowers, and he's vowing to expose FBI corruption.
We had a Department of Justice that treated moms and dads as terrorists. You got the FBI that paid Twitter $3 million to censor conservative viewpoints on their platform. In 2020, they suppressed the Hunter Biden story. It's been weaponized against the very people they're supposed to serve.
A Gallup poll last year found that almost 80% of Democrats had a favorable view of the FBI. But among Republicans, it was less than 30%. Baker says the FBI is a threat to all Americans.
It's a threat on the right and the left. What's been happening to conservatives in the last couple of years could just as easily happen to liberals. And sincere Democrats who are concerned about civil rights or civil liberties should definitely unite with Republicans in trying to reform the FBI.
The out-of-control domestic intelligence agency set in motion by Robert Mueller was, according to Baker, brought to a head by James Comey, who Baker calls the worst FBI director in history.
And a lot of the employees liked him because he was very easy on people. And a lot of bad stuff was allowed to happen that he should have spoken up about.
Comey would be fired, as were the other figures in the Russian collusion scandal.
And the Bureau executives keep saying, well, all the rotten apples, they're gone. But they still have not looked at the fundamental problem. Why does this keep happening? And what needs to happen is the culture needs to be changed.
Baker says the FBI needs a serious shakeup, but he's not at all confident it will happen. Far from cutting back the FBI, the federal government is going forward with plans for a new FBI headquarters, twice the size of the Pentagon. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, we've become a surveillance state, and part of this is the fault of the FBI, but I've got to put the fault where it really belongs, and that is in the U.S. Congress. They're the ones who passed the Patriot Act. They're the ones that created the FISA courts. They're the ones that allowed domestic surveillance of U.S. citizens, all in the name of trying to stop terrorism. In the aftermath, here we are more than 20 years afterwards, did it effectively stop terrorism in the United States? Well, some of it stopped, and clearly we haven't had a foreign attack in a long time. But in that, have we given up our rights and our fundamental rights as U.S. citizens? What the government is collecting about us is absolutely incredible. It's not just your search history. It's literally every stock you own, every investment you've ever made, every credit card purchase, their ability to track your movements. All of these things are being kept on individual Americans. And when you look at how the FBI has been politicized, and that same information going into, well, let's have surveillance of a U.S. presidential campaign. Let's use SWAT teams to do search warrants on Roger Stone. Let's use agents armed with automatic weapons to go and arrest a pro-life protester. These things should not be. But we need to identify where the problem is. The problem is in the Congress, and the Congress needs to act to rein in the FBI.